prices hitting record highs in 2025, more and more people are starting to ask a question. Do I really need a modern car to drive every day? Maybe I should look back for something cheap, simple, and easy to fix. And this is exactly where the 90s cars come back into the conversation. Modern vehicles are packed with technology, touchscreens, sensors, driving assistants, but for many drivers, this so-called progress feels more like over-engineering. Too many computers, too many things that can fail, too many expensive repairs. So people start looking backward. In today's video, we are going to answer one simple but important question. Is it actually a smart idea to daily drive a 90s truck in 2025? And I think I am a pretty good person to talk about this. I love 90s vehicles and I've owned many of them over the years, both American and European. And right now I own a 98 Dodge Durango. It's my budget DIY project and the truck I'll be using as our demonstration car in this video. Before we move on, there is one more important reason why 90s cars are coming back, and it's nostalgia. I was born in the early 90s and these were simply the cars of my childhood. Back then, we didn't think about buying cars, we were just kids, but we watched them on the streets, in movies, and in magazines. And today, for many people, buying a 90s car isn't just about transportation, it's about reconnecting with those childhood memories. And it's not just regular drivers who feel this. Even the big manufacturers see it. Just look at the official 2025 Christmas movie by Chevrolet. No electric vehicles, no modern technology, only classic General Motors trucks and cars, square bodies, analog dashboards, V8 sound. The people behind marketing in big corporations know exactly what emotions they are playing on. Okay, but let's be honest, technical simplicity and nostalgia don't run the automotive market. So now let's get back to reality. The world has changed a lot in last 35 years. We live faster, we work faster, and naturally we also drive faster. In the United States, the typical highway speed limit used to be 55 miles per hour until the mid 1990s. By the end of the decade, many states moved to 65 miles per hour, and today 70 miles per hour is completely normal for a lot of states, and in places like Texas, even higher speeds are the standard. Now look at Europe. Here in Poland, the legal highway speed limit is about 140 kilometers per hour, which is about 87 miles per hour. And there are countries that allow people to drive even faster, like Germany, where on certain highway sections there is no speed limit at all. And speed alone is not the whole story. Modern traffic doesn't just move faster in straight lines. Everything is faster now. Lane changes are quicker, merging into traffic is more aggressive. Entering highway ramps happens at much higher speeds than it did 30 years ago. Drivers react faster, but they also expect your car to react instantly. Stable steering, sharp response, confident braking. So the big question becomes, were 90s cars actually designed for the pace of today's roads? To answer that question, let's start with suspension, because suspension is what really determines your confidence behind the wheel. You can have a powerful engine and a strong drivetrain, but if your suspension is designed mainly for heavy loads and towing, you can't expect sharp reactions and good handling at higher speeds. And that's exactly what most 90s trucks and SUVs suspensions were built for: work, weight, and durability. My Dodge Durango uses torsion bars in the front and leaf springs in the rear. Of course, the configuration may vary from model to model, but this core design is very similar in most 90s trucks and SUVs. So now, using this Durango as an example, I'll show you how a typical 90s truck suspension actually works. Let's look at the front suspension for a moment. Torsion bars work as springs. One end is attached to the frame, the other to the control arm. When the suspension moves, the bar twists. That twisting stores energy and then releases it back as the suspension returns to its original position. It's super simple and extremely durable solution, but there is also a downside. This design limits suspension geometry, and limited geometry means limited handling in fast corners and during sudden direction changes. Now look at the rear end. Instead of coil springs, we have leaf springs, stacked steel plates supporting a solid rear axle. What's important, both rear wheels are mechanically connected, so when one side of the suspension moves, the other side is affected as well. This is a great setup for durability, heavy towing, and carrying serious weight. But at higher speeds, handling is worse than with independent suspension, and stability is lower in fast corners. Modern SUVs follow a completely different engineering philosophy. Today, the priority is stability, control, and safety at speed. Instead of leaf springs and solid axles, many modern SUVs now use fully independent suspension at both the front and the rear. Multi-link control arms, coil springs, and much more advanced shock absorbers have become the standard. Then there are sway bars. Their job is to reduce body roll in corners by linking the left and right sides of the suspension. Many 90s trucks and SUVs had very small sway bars, and some had none at all in the rear. It's worth mentioning that work trucks like the Ford F-150 or the Chevrolet Silverado still use a solid rear axle with leaf springs, and that's not a step backward. It's an engineering choice for payload, durability, and towing strength. The big difference is that modern leaf springs are nothing like the stiff, heavy setups from the 90s. Today they use thinner, progressive spring packs, better mounting geometry, and far more advanced shock absorbers. The result is a rear suspension that can still carry huge loads, but rides smoother, reacts faster, and stays far more stable at highway speeds than any 90s truck ever could. Now something about steering. Most 90s trucks and SUVs used hydraulic power steering with slow steering racks, often in the 16 to 1 to 18 to 1 ratio range. That meant you had to turn the wheel a lot to make the vehicle change direction. It worked fine for maneuvering a big truck at low speeds, but on the highway it felt slow and imprecise. At higher speeds, many 90s vehicles felt like they were floating, with a clear delay between steering input and actual response. Today, almost everything uses electric power steering. There's no hydraulic pump anymore, just an electric motor mounted directly on the steering rack. This makes the response much faster, with almost instant reaction to your steering input. It gives you more precise control of the vehicle at the highway speeds. And finally, let's talk about transmissions. In the 90s, most trucks and SUVs used simple 4-speed automatic transmissions, and many of those transmissions were still being sold well into the early 2000s. They were tough, easy to maintain, and relatively cheap to repair, and that's why manufacturers stuck with them for so long. But the downside was flexibility. With only 4 gears, the engine often had to work harder than necessary. Highway cruising meant higher RPM, acceleration was less smooth, and fuel economy suffered. Modern transmissions are a completely different story. 5, 6, 7, and even 10-speed automatics allow the engine to stay in its optimal power and efficiency range almost all the time. This means smoother acceleration, lower RPM at highway speeds, better fuel economy, and a much calmer driving overall. Now let's talk about safety features, starting with lighting. In the 1990s, almost everything was based on old-school halogen technology. Most trucks and SUVs used simple halogen bulbs with basic reflector lenses. Xenon headlights existed back then, but they were reserved for expensive luxury cars. LED lighting wasn't in mass production yet. Because of that, night driving in 90s trucks is simply more demanding. The light output is weaker, the beam pattern is less precise, and visibility is worse, especially in urban areas where you constantly have to watch for pedestrians stepping out of the darkness. The same story applies to the rear lights. In the 90s, taillights and brake lights were still based on classic incandescent bulbs, and those bulbs don't turn on instantly, they have a small delay. Modern LED brake lights react almost immediately, which gives the driver behind you a fraction of a second more to react. At highway speeds, that fraction of a second can make a real difference. Just like with the Lightning, you will find very few electronic driver assist systems in most 90s trucks and SUVs, especially systems that help in bad weather conditions. For the majority of vehicles back then, the only widely available safety system was ABS. Traction control existed, but it was mostly used in expensive luxury sedans and coupes. That means when you drive a 90s SUV or truck, you are basically on your own. There is no electronic stability control correcting a skid, no traction control cutting power when the wheels spin, no system subtly helping you stay in your lane during sudden maneuvers. And that makes driving much more demanding, especially in snow, strong crosswinds, heavy rain, or on icy roads. You have to constantly stay alert, modulate the throttle yourself, correct the steering on your own, and always think a few steps ahead. Over a longer trip, that extra workload can become surprisingly tiring compared to driving a modern vehicle that quietly assists you in the background. And then we've got the interiors. Many 90s SUVs and trucks are known for their big, soft, comfortable seats that almost feel like sitting on a sofa. You can drive for hours in one stretch, and in many cases, you still don't feel tired afterward. The materials also feel different compared to many modern cars. The plastics, trims, and leather were often thicker and more solid, which gives the cabin a warm, cozy atmosphere. Add the soft, incandescent interior lighting, yellow, calm, and easy on the eyes, and the whole interior simply feels like a home. And then there is the way you control everything. No touchscreens, no menus, no layers of software. Every function had a physical button, selector, or knob. You could adjust the climate, change the radio station, or turn on the lights without even taking your eyes off the road. Everything was purely mechanical, purely analog. However, in the modern world, there are also some real downsides to those classic interiors. Today, we all rely on things like GPS navigation and hands-free calling. It's completely natural, almost like using your headlights or seatbelt. We don't even think about it anymore. And this is where many 90s vehicles start to feel outdated. In a lot of them, installing a modern aftermarket radio with a screen for navigation and phone integration is either difficult or looks completely out of place. As a result, many drivers end up using a phone mounted on the windshield or dashboard instead. And of course that works, but it's less safe, less convenient, and more distracting than having proper built-in hands-free system like we do in modern cars. When it comes to servicing, 90s cars live in a very interesting middle ground. On one hand, they are mechanically simple. No complicated software, no dozens of control modules, no computer calibrations after each repair. Most jobs can still be done with basic tools, mechanical knowledge, and a workshop manual. That makes them perfect for DIY owners. Parts are still easily available, especially for popular American and European models. But there's also the other side of the story: age. Even if you manage to find a clean, low mileage example, you simply can't escape the effects of time. Rubber hoses crack, bushings wear out, seals dry up, electrical connectors corrode. No matter how well a car was built, 30 years will always leave its mark somewhere. And sometimes this leads to a frustrating pattern. Not one big failure, but a series of small, recurring issues. A sensor here, a leaking hose there, a worn joint next month. Each repair on its own may seem minor, but together they can slowly drain your time, energy, and patience if the car is your daily driver. We could easily talk for hours more about this topic, but I think we've covered the most important points. So now it's time for the conclusion and to finally answer the question: is daily driving a 90s truck or SUV in 2025 a smart idea? And my honest verdict is no, it's not. Even though I truly love vehicles from that era and I've owned many of them, and I'm sure I will own more in the future, I don't think they make sense as daily drivers anymore. These trucks and SUVs were built for a completely different world. They don't really match modern traffic conditions, today's driving speeds, or today's safety expectations. Simply put, they are outdated, and if you are someone who drives at least 1 hour a day, the difference becomes very clear. A 90s truck or SUV will demand more attention, more physical effort, and more mental focus. At the end of the day, instead of feeling relaxed, you will often feel more tired and more frustrated than you would in a modern vehicle. That doesn't mean buying a 90s truck or SUV is a bad idea at all. If there's a model you've always dreamt about, right now is actually the perfect moment to jump in. Prices are still reasonable, and owning one purely for passion can bring a lot of joy. These vehicles are also perfect bases for all kinds of projects. Off-road builds, weekend camping rigs, cruiser setups for summer drives, or simply a second vehicle for occasional use when you need to haul some cargo, move furniture, or tow a trailer. So as a hobby car, a project car, or a weekend machine, a 90s truck or SUV can be an amazing choice. Of course, this is just my personal opinion, shaped by many years of owning and driving these vehicles. I'd really love to hear what you think about it, so let me know your thoughts in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching.